The following podcast contains adult language and themes. Listener discretion is advised.
The horror genre has been part of every storytelling medium since the beginning of time, from cautionary tales to making sense of the human existence. As soon as film was introduced in the late 19th century, legendary directors like Georges Méliès wasted no time creating visual delights that gave audiences a good scare. As time went on, the genre became more popular and respected, with A-list stars and blockbuster directors making their own waves.
You're gonna need a bigger boat.
But life is just never that simple. All too often, what brings joy to so many earns ridicule and demonization by others. Like violent video games and banned books, so many parent groups were concerned with their children becoming violent after consuming this content. And isn't all fun things, the church warned of Satan brainwashing you through the screen.
The power of Christ compels you!
From the viewpoint of many people, this genre is simply misunderstood. And so are they. What they love about these films is the craft, the art, the creativity, the positive messages. For some of them, these were a fun means of escape from true, scarier events in their real life. For others, it was inspiration for writing, acting, painting, storytelling, all kinds of creativity. In our modern world, the horror community has grown and shares ties to the multi-billion-dollar convention world that serves up nostalgia and excitement to fans of comics, video games, books, board games, and cult films. Fans have found ways to discover bonds that unite so many people from so many different walks of life. A beauty in the humanity that so many people couldn't see and tried to dismiss or even erase from our culture altogether.
Fuck the prime time, bitch!
Like unsuspecting teens warned to stay out of the old cemetery, we're definitely going there. Taboo topics are back on the table.
Welcome to Elm Street. We're going there, bitch.
Seems like this is our big break in the podcasting, bitch.
Pardon our esoteric allusions to the genre, but that's why we're here today. To nerd out on horror, but also talk about the stigmas behind it and why we want to kind of debunk some of the myths about people who enjoy the genre and why. We are at the home of the gracious host right outside of Philadelphia, Nick and Nikki Lombardo. And as you can tell, I think they kind of like horror films. And let's see if today's guests are one of us. Google gobble, one of us. Let's start with our host, Nick.
Hey, I'm Nick Lombardo. I am a film programmer at the Colonial Theater, and I am a YouTuber who does a 90s nostalgia channel.
And you kind of like the
Just
horror.
a little bit. Okay. Light fan.
And a recent colleague of mine who also designed the graphics for season 3, Shaun.
Bitch. Yes, I'm Shaun, a lifelong horror fanatic. I'm an illustrator, I'm a designer, and I dabbled in special effects makeup for a few years.
Yeah, we're going to talk a little bit about all of the things you guys just mentioned. But first, high level. So I guess we can start with you. You just mentioned you used to do special effects makeup. What's your overall, is that your main connection to horror, or did it start well before all of that?
No. My connection started as young as I can remember, and I'll just go through this quickly. But because I've been giving this thought in the last few days, my parents split when I was 3, and my earliest memory is them fighting in the room while I was watching King Kong. So to me, it's an egg first, what came first, the chicken or the egg situation, where I think after that, I was kind of scared. I wasn't sleeping well, but I was also attracted to horror movies. So I would go to bed, I wouldn't be able to sleep, and then I would kind of creep to the top of the steps. I'd call down to my mom and I would say, "Hey Mom, can I come down? I've got a headache. I've got this, I've got that." And I would go down, and then that's when I would start watching, whatever horror movie was on at night. And, I just think the two just kind of worked in tandem.
That is, Man, that's
not to go dark there, but
no. That's exactly what I want to talk about here. The psychology behind it is so nuanced and layered that I don't think people give it credit. Some of everything we talk about in the show, but especially talking about the kinds of things that people are into and consume as far as art goes, is almost about like facing and tackling your demons kind of a thing.
Sure thing.
So put a pin in that for 2 seconds. Nick, what is your connection to the genre?
Similar to Shaun, it started when I was a kid. I used to watch Commander USA's groovy movies with my dad, and they would do kind of like schlocky horror movies in the afternoon. And then I remember I was being babysat by some older kids, and they had rented Friday the 13th Part 4 when it was new. And I was scared, but they're like, we're watching this. I'm like, I guess I'm watching this. And they were explaining to me.
How old were you at this time?
I'm eight maybe.
Okay.
And I was scared, but they were explaining to me like, okay, and like in the movie before this, her spoilers, you know, his mom gets her head cut off.
If you ever watched it, it's on you, man.
And then in the second one, her head's on the table. So they tell me all these things that had happened in the films before it.
Did they tell you Kevin Bacon was in one of these?
They did not.
Okay.
But it was the first time I kind of like, I was scared, but then I was fascinated. So it was my first exposure to mythology where I'm like, I want to go back and see these movies where the mom dies and where he gets the axe mark in the mask and where like he gets the hockey mask. Like that fascinated me, but there's this whole lineage that you can watch.
Yeah.
So that really kickstarted me into the next realm where I was like, I'm going to go out on my own and find this stuff, not just watch it with my dad.
And so fast forward, what have you been doing with it? High level, what have you been doing to stay connected to horror other than obviously collecting? You guys can only see so much of this room. You're seeing like a third of what is essentially like an unofficial museum to horror. What have you done since then? What's your
connection to it now?
Yeah.
I'm a film programmer, so I do a film series at the Colonial Theater where they shot the original Blob, and we'll do like
cool.
Once a month. Yeah, we show like different horror movies. We do an Italian horror marathon. So I get this opportunity to see these things I never get to see in the theater because they came out before I was born or I was too little, on the big screen on film. And then I go to horror movie conventions where they bring out a lot of the actors and vendors come out and sell stuff and they preview movies. So that's kind of like how I keep it alive these days.
Are there some names that the lay person might recognize if you were to say who shows up at some of these conventions these days? Like I'm sure
Bruce Campbell. I've met
Bruce Campbell is definitely a convention guy, and everyone who's met him who I've talked to said he is awesome, like super nice down to earth guy.
He's the best. I met him at a screening of Evil Dead 2 in Jersey and got to go up in the projection booth and watch Evil Dead 2 with them, and he's like looking out the little window and he's like, oh, here's where I cut off my hand, and my mind was like, I'm watching Evil Dead 2 with Bruce Campbell.
With Bruce Campbell.
It was amazing.
Was that the horror one?
That was at the horror.
Yeah, I was there for that.
And then, like Robert Englund comes out alive, who plays Freddy Krueger.
Yeah.
I think everyone who's played Jason at some point, I definitely have come out to all the shows.
Shaun, so fast forward, you had an affinity for the genre. You started doing special effects makeup. Something about a dragon's horn that really got you turned on. And like, what's been your connection since?
I think like most of us, we can say with any kind of arts and entertainment, a lot of it is escapism. But I think as a kid who was kind of having some issues, a little scared, going through some stuff, watching something really scary was my escape. And then I was also an art kid, so it was just feeding my imagination. So, I would go to school and I was a very introverted kid. And I remember going to daycare after school and all the kids playing over there, and I wanted nothing to do with that. And I would kind of just sit there and I would draw. And then suddenly it's like, I just watched this movie called The Thing last night, and I'm going to draw this head. There's this head with these spider legs, and it's amazing. And so I think it was just my escape, and it was my safe place.
Were teachers concerned?
Can I tell a quick story?
Yeah.
So one of my favorite memories was, Nick, you'll appreciate this, was second grade. I don't know if you guys remember, we would do book reports. We would get like a big piece of construction paper, and then the bottom half, they would tape like that craft paper with the cyan and magenta lines on it, and you'd write your book report, and on the top half, you'd draw a picture. And so I had just traded some kid these Conan comics for the Creepshow comic.
Okay, the point right.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking, that's legit. I mean, it's a book. And so I did my book report on Father's Day, which is the opening story in Creepshow, which involves a father coming back for his revenge. I'll just say that. But I still remember presenting that to Mrs. Ogus, which was, when we were kids and every teacher seemed like they were 65 years old in old school. Yeah. And she was not impressed. And my mom had to come in for a conference. So
that's great. And then how many, like when you worked on special effects makeup, did you do a bunch of movies or was it mostly?
So by high school, that was my thing with horror movies. It was all the practical effects and any kid that grew up in the 80s as a horror fan, it was just the golden age of special effects.
Oh yeah.
And to this day, I'm close to my high school art teacher who always says, Shaun, you came to me asking if we could do something with special effects, and I didn't have the budget at the time, and I still feel bad. But in my 20s, I lived in Philadelphia. I had just gotten married, and I was like, all right, I'm going to do this for a few years and give it a shot. So yeah, I got the Dick Smith books, and I got the Tom Savini books, and I got books, and I bought latex, and I started teaching myself in the basement of my house. And in 5 years, I worked on some pretty cool projects. 3 specifically, I'll just say there was a shoot, which I'll provide photos, a short movie called Of Darkness, which was one of the longest running shorts on Comcast FearNet. I created a book, and when we brought the prop out to the child actor, he just threw up on the wall, which
That's amazing.
A second project I worked on, I killed a guy in front of the New York Stock Exchange on the street. We slit his throat. I created a prosthetic, a nose prosthetic, and a throat prosthetic. And that day, I got to work with 3 Sesame Street puppeteers who had created the characters of the show. It was meant to be a pilot for Adult Swim. But again, I worked with Marty Robinson, who created Snuffleupagus. And it was just an awesome, amazing day. And then the third example I'll give is I worked on one of the very first Choose Your Own Adventure interactive horror movies, which I have a friend from high school who was just a website whiz kid. Never went to college. He moved out to California. He started a very successful agency. He sold it, took his millions, bought a couple houses, and then next thing you know, we were working on this, developing this in 2009. 2-week shoot in Portland. We lit a guy on fire. We flipped some cars. We did a lot of stuff. I was a special effects, but I was working under a woman named Christina Cordum, who's amazing. Who's worked on, you look her up on IMDb. But it was an amazing experience. We were in over our head. It didn't turn out the way I wanted to. It's still on YouTube somewhere. It's got all the reaction videos on YouTube somewhere. And what I'm most proud about it is, and you can help me out here, but a few years ago, the Black Mirror put out an interactive movie.
They had like a German kind of thing.
Yeah.
Rammstein or something.
Yeah.
But when that came out and it was doing this, like in Wired magazine and stuff, they were crediting our film as one of the first.
That's awesome.
One of the first.
I was going to say that's the mainstream one I think a lot of people are familiar with.
I just want to jump on something he said too, because you made a good point. Like, as a kid, I truly growing up, like people wanted to be a baseball player, or my first idol, the first person I wanted to be when I grew up was Tom Savini, and that was like I would read articles on Tom Savini, and like again that idea of mythology was the first person I would go to video stores. I'm going to find all the movies Tom Savini did special effects on. So I'm like, where's Martin? Martin was hard to find, and then Dawn of the Dead, and it's like. You didn't have idols like that, kids wanted to be like, Ken Clifford, or it's like, I wanted to be Tom Savini.
That's awesome.
Yeah, totally.
I have to admit, I'm a film nerd, but my knowledge of horror is limited. So those of you watching or listening who are like really into it, you have to excuse my ignorance. You guys, I'll sit there and joke with you, but you'll be like, he only understands like the mainstream top ones. Yeah, for sure.
Bitch.
Yeah. I appreciate any of the genre. I actually judged a student horror trailer competition where they would just create horror films at the college that I went to, that I later went back and taught part-time at. And the students, the creativity it took to do some of these things, I just have so much appreciation for it. The reason I've never gotten into it is like I was raised in a very religious household in a lot of ways, And anything about the occult was not only was it like, that's all evil, that's all bad, but, you know, horror was like my bedtime stories about, you know, Revelation and the angel of death and the four horsemen and all this shit. My parents, it makes them sound wackier than they actually were, but like, I was a very literal, deep thinking kid, and that kind of stuff freaked me out. Now, to this day, I love especially the modern horror that is, you know, some of it I would say is more psychological thriller than horror. But I also like gore, like super gore, I can't get into because I don't know. Anytime if I see somebody being just like mangled, I picture somebody I care about and that happening to them. And that really fucks with my head. And I try to be objective and go, that's not how everybody views it. And that's important because I want to talk about the stuff that there has been mainstream pushback over the years about anything that isn't just, you know, like very rated G kind of stuff. Even heavy metal music, you know, like I remember like we were told growing up at some point by somebody at church, like the devil made rock music, you know, that kind of shit. There's now a mainstream following that I don't think used to be there. I think a lot of what you guys are into was very much, it still is, but some of it especially was very cult following, right? But growing up, it was seen as counterculture, especially in religious communities, very misunderstood. You know, but there was the idea, especially people of the church, that you're inviting Satan into your home. And so, yes, society has evolved, but it wasn't that long ago, back in June of 2025, Candace Cameron Bure, which is the sister of Kirk Cameron, who I love to bash, because he is a true horror monster, in my opinion. That's just my opinion.
Yeah.
She said that watching scary movies or engaging with other dark themed content can open up a portal through which demonic forces or evil spirits could enter your home. And it sounded like she was pitching a horror film. And I want to know, has she seen The Ring or Poltergeist? And can we sue her for plagiarism? Have you guys experienced that as you're like drawing pictures and talking to your teacher or talking to the other kids who are into baseball, where they're like, oh, you must be bad. You must be evil if you see that stuff.
It's interesting because there are those two school of thoughts. Like I remember being in elementary school and I'd be in 5th grade and I'd be reading Stephen King, you know, like Pet Sematary or like Friday the 13th movie novelizations. And I had some teachers that were like, read something different. And then I had other teachers that just celebrated the idea like you're reading. Like it's awesome that you're reading. It definitely, like you said, was a niche. Like there weren't really other horror kids when we were kids. Like if I met Shaun, like we would have been like,
Oh,
yeah. How do you exist?
Yeah, because it's like comic book kids or heavy metal kids. It's like you kind of were like outcasts. It was this weird thing. Everyone was into baseball. Everyone was into like MTV, but like it was this little thing all your own. But I think that's what made it special. Yeah. But yeah, like I don't ever remember having any experiences where I remember getting like, you know when you get those little Valentines? Like in elementary school, I remember like one girl writing it to Nick the Death Child, just because like I was always a Angry magazine and just.
I think you should have hung that on your wall.
Death Child.
That's a good moniker.
I'm like, I'll take it.
Shaun, have you seen that, experienced that?
Not quite to that degree. I would say kind of like what Nick just said. I come from again, divorced parents early, but my dad's side of the family, much more conservative, all sporty. And again,
Tom Savini, how many touchdowns did he make last season?
Do you mean Tom Lombardi? Bitch.
That reminds me though, just I am going to make a comment because I did think of something. My parents would let me like rent stuff within reason, like horror movies and stuff like that. They weren't going to rent me Faces of Death or something like that.
Oh, yeah.
Friday the 13th, it was fine. But my best friend, who like went to Catholic school and all that, was not allowed to watch that stuff. So it was always like, I'm going to sleep over your house. and we can rent Nightmare on Elm Street too, or whatever, you know. And his parents, I think, always kind of like, I don't like you hanging out with that kid. But I'm like, I was a good kid. Like, I did well in school. Right? Like, you know, but it was just that judgment. Like, he likes weird stuff. He must be weird.
Yeah. Me? Yeah. See, now I'm going to take off on what he just said. And that is, again, the glory of the 80s. And just to change topics just ever so slightly, but the way I see life now as a parent, and it's funny because I was just texting someone else about this today, and it's funny how at age 7, I would walk 5 blocks to get my mom cigarettes, and I was able to buy a soda, and my mom would take us to the movies, and she'd say 2 tickets for Hellraiser, and then she would just walk away, and we would walk into the theater. I have a vivid memory of my mom Mom, we want Faces of Death. And then she would just walk into the video store and come out with Faces of Death. Yeah. As long as I'll buy her cigarettes, walking a few blocks to buy her cigarettes, it's a done deal.
But as a parent, you would never do most of it.
And it's just the glory of the 80s. Like, again, I had the neighbor who every Friday night was like new release night. You'd go up to his house and we'd stay up all night and we'd watch, Sleepaway Camp, and we'd watch The Stuff, and we'd watch The Brain. When his parents went to bed, then we would go and we'd take, Ron Jeremy's latest movie that his dad had. Well, he just had tapes sitting around, and we just watched the hedgehog swing around in circles for a few hours. And that was just the 80s. And now as a parent, my son is 12, and I still, as far as I know, I still haven't shown him a breast, and and again, it was my commitment not to drive him to horror movies or drive him to things I was into. I wanted him to be himself. But now I'm like, am I raising a softie? No, it was a different time, but you have to think about it too. Like, we adapted to the world that we were raised in. This is a different world. They're already going to see, all they have to do is log online and see every horrible, good and bad thing out there, right? So I don't have kids, but a lot of my friends, we were kids of the 80s and early 90s, and we, all of them are like, I will never let my children do the kind of shit we used to do. And I don't regret how we were raised, but it was a different world. I love it. I mean, it's the best of times.
It was the best of times.
It was truly the best of times.
It was
like no man's land, but in the best possible way.
Yeah, like, you guys are around my age. Like, there will never be a going back to that.
No.
You went from school, you ride your bike somewhere, you won't come home until it got dark, and you knew it was time for dinner, and you just kind of like fail generation.
Yeah. For better or worse. Well, horror, yes, there are just like the exploitation films, right? But horror as a genre, especially when you look at it throughout its entirety, is usually about social justice, and there's messaging that is layered in there that when people are talking about, oh, you're just a snowflake or something else, but it's like a lot of the films that they loved were actually shining a light on something really important. And then again, as it's gotten more mainstream over the years, you have a film like Get Out, right? Like, that's, some of it's very on the nose, but that's kind of part of the charm of it. But you have other films that have this like Weapons or Barbarian from, do you know the director?
Zach, I'm trying to find Zach.
The Whitest Kids You Know, whatever.
Kliger? That?
So, you have those films that have obvious messaging in them, and it's like, it turns that notion on its head of, oh, this is just about bad people liking bad stuff. And then you even have a more modern movement of people in the church who are like, actually, I think Christians should embrace horror even more, because it is ultimately about the messaging and good versus evil, and like, there's way more good that comes out of it than bad. As far as like the psychology, not of the viewer, but of the films themselves and the stories. What do you think about that? Don't you see that there's a lot of things that are in it that are just beyond trying to show, murder and exploitation?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I mean, like all the Friday the 13th were morality tales, essentially, like how sex died, your drugs die. Like you said, as you go on, you kind of get these things with more overt messages. But I think that there definitely is stuff like that.
Again, when you go back to the 80s, everything was about Vietnam, you know? And if you look at horror, we had movies, and this is going back a decade prior to that, but we had
Texas Chainsaw.
Bob Clark's Dead of Night.
Yes.
We had Texas Chainsaw Massacre. You have Jacob's Ladder in 1989. But a lot of this stuff was making, metaphors or messages about war. And again, if you look at the 80s, everything was about Vietnam. Everything in Hollywood was Vietnam.
Yeah, but there were like two sides to that story. Some was like Rambo, he's a badass, and then you had something like Born on the 4th of July that was like, no, war's fucked up.
Yeah. Or the damage that war.
Yeah, the PTSD before they had the term PTSD.
Yeah, we were just talking about that, how you got the first Rambo, and by Rambo 3, me, my brother, all our friends have like Rambo machine guns, and we have Rambo action figures, and
montages set to music.
Survivor soundtrack.
It's really bizarre to think about it, because I don't think we would see the same thing today. But the amount of kids' toys that were sold around rated R movies back in the day. Again, I'm not saying that's all bad. I still have a lot of nostalgia for that time. But it's like Aliens. I remember when they were selling Aliens toys. It was like, oh, we're the Space Marines. And I'm like, then you go back and watch that movie. I'm like, what kid would be like, hey, since I saw, Bill Paxton going, hey, motherfucker, and blowing shit up, I want to buy that toy now. Like, who is this for?
Well, but again, when we talk about everything that might not be right or we might not prefer about today, I do think it all traces back to the 80s. And I think the fact that you had a superb suspenseful horror film like Alien, and then by 86 it was an action movie, still superb, but now it's kind of crossing over into the action genre.
It's a little more mainstream.
For wider audience. And then you get Predator, which again kind of goes to what we were saying, is that was a movie that my dad took us to, but I would show my son now, but still a little bit for adults and still a little bit for kids.
Oh yeah.
And then here we are, 4 decades later, and we've got all these Alien and Predator crossovers. Mm-hmm. And I just took my son to see a PG-13 Predator movie.
Badlands?
Badlands.
Your take? Good?
I approved. Bitch. No, I like it. I'm sorry.
You're good.
That's the thing, too, is like, it's got PG-13 Predator. It's like you go back and you look at something like Jaws or Poltergeist. Those movies were like PG movies. And I think if they had come out 10 years later, they would have definitely been R-rated movies.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
It's like Poltergeist scared the crap out of a kid like that. Like, I remember seeing that on cable as a kid, and that like haunted me more than probably any R-rated movie I could have seen at the time.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was PG.
It was PG movie.
Yeah. Well, do you guys know what movie entered into the PG-13 era?
Temple of Doom.
Yes.
Yeah.
One of my favorite. Indiana Jones is one of my favorite. Well,
see, for me, Raiders, nothing compares to Raiders.
Temple's mine.
Oh,
see, and I understand why. And mine is Last Crusade. So we got all.
Oh, we got it covered. Yeah.
Oh.
Now Raiders is a very close second.
Raiders is perfection.
Yeah. So for those of you who don't know,
and I saw
of course they know. PG because of the heart. The guy pulling the heart out of the chest. They're like, we can't call this PG, but there's nothing else that makes it that bad. What if we come up with a new rating?
Ironically, the thing in that movie that got me the most wasn't even the heart. As a kid, what freaked me out was all the bugs when she turned her hand over and she had all the sex on her.
And the monkey brains, that freaked me out.
Well, what I find so funny about that is I still think of that movie as a kid's movie. Because of all the silly scenes with...
Well, it was a toy movie. There were toys for that.
Were there?
Yeah.
There's another movie, actually, you just said, Toys. There are so many things that...
Toys? The toy?
The movie Toys.
Oh, Toys.
With Robin Williams. Like, there are things... Like Home Alone. When you take a step back, if Home Alone had not existed and it came out today, you'd be like, what the hell is going on? There's a second grader going around trying to murder people. I don't know. Like,
you never even have that movie today. He would just call his...
Never.
He would just call his mom and be like, hey, you guys forgot me.
Or like, it would absolutely be rated R. So, like, the idea, again, that, like, oh, this is immoral. Morality is 100% contextual. There's a book that I mention oftentimes on the show this season because I read it, and it's like a PhD level read. It's called The Righteous Mind. And it talks about there is no society in all of human existence, and to this day, geographically or chronologically, that have two exact moral codes. Morality, when people want to say it's universal, there are obvious things that everybody agrees, this is bad, this is good, right? But like morality is 1,000% contextual. And you can take any one thing and say, yeah, but who would ever say that this is okay? There are instances. And it doesn't mean like we all have our opinions, but the morality of like, oh, well, that's gory, or that's this, you know, that's offensive. That is contextual. And there's obviously a big following. There's obviously people who are very, very passionate about this genre. So other misconceptions about the genre, like in the 90s when video game graphics started getting better towards the tail end of the decade, there was obviously the big push of like, this is bad. Kids are going to play games where they're shooting up people. They're going to actually start shooting up people in real life. But they're saying that based on a notion, not any data. And that same kind of thing had been kind of brushed over onto the horror fans. They're like, oh, you're watching some guy get chopped up with an axe. It's going to desensitize you, and you're going to be able to like do those things. You as a horror fan are going to become more aggressive. You're going to dissociate, and you're going to become antisocial. And what do you say to that?
I think it's kind of the opposite, actually, because I think it usually was kind of like the weird, like non-social kids that kind of found horror, and it was kind of like a comfort thing to them. I think it was usually like the kids that were really like, you were really into art. It was like the art kids, or the kids that like to read a lot, or kind of the kids that kind of like to use their mind a little more, use their imagination. And I don't think most of the horror fans I've ever met are very like soft-spoken, very friendly, very artistic. I think that's probably one of the most common themes you see in horror fans, is they're kind of like into some kind of art or something like that. So I've never seen it where I feel like it would cause violence. I think like it doesn't desensitize. I think like, at least for me, when I watched movies as a kid, I looked at it as special effects. I looked at it as art. Like, oh, that's amazing how they do that.
Totally agree. There's shades of gray for everything.
Sure.
So I don't want to generalize, but I think, again, disenfranchised, whether you feel like a nerd as a kid or you feel like a bit of an outsider, which I certainly did. And I think you tend to grow up to be more sympathetic and more compassionate, about things like this. And I think, and again, when I go to these festivals, I feel like there's LGBTQ support. I feel like, and not to get political, but I just feel like you're just surrounded by good people who care. And I just don't, I've barely ever met, we all have the one try-hard horror friend who tells you how he's the biggest horror fan in the world, but everything sucks because it's not violent enough or it's not scary enough. But I mean, all the people I roll with, all the people I've known, we're just the biggest softies. And again, I think it's just an imagination, it's an escape. It's just something, we're just super passionate about. And not to get political, but I just feel like, again, I feel like one side is compassionate and other people are not compassionate. And I think just to appreciate arts, the art of film, the art of music, any kind of movie, but especially something like the horror genre and some of the topics, I think you've got to have a heart and you got to care. I mean, like, again, my metaphor for horror is the violence needs to be in proportion with the story, and it's always the icing on top of the cake. Like, I want my violence to be in proportion to the story. I want to see an arm cut off to index the danger of the villain. But I'm not in it to see cruelty to people or cruelty to animals or bad message. I mean, there are some horror movies I've seen that I'll never watch again.
Right.
But I'm also, to me, I view it all as art. And so I'm like one of those, like, I'll give anything a shot, but that's the way I see it.
It's the thing, the animal violence in movies too. That's like a line for me.
That's a hard line for me.
Yeah.
Especially dogs.
Yes.
You kill the dog, I'm out.
You can kill like 50 people in a movie. The minute a dog dies, then I'm like...
Because that's like a kid. It's like an innocent creature that, because it's funny because you had said that when you and I talked early on, and you're like, it's escapism. And I'm like, to me, again, it's just the way my brain works. I respect it. I love film for escapism. Some horror, some any kind of film, the different parts of genres, when it feels too much like real life, I'm like, this is no escapism for me. And some,
totally.
When the world got even uglier, let's say around 2020, I didn't want to watch dark films because I felt like the world was, my eyes were open and the world was much darker than I ever realized. Mm-hmm. And only recently have I been craving some of those genre again because I'm like, okay, now it's about finding the goodness in people, and what you guys have built through your love of this whole genre is a community.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
People who are connecting about art and story and everything else. Like, it is no less real than people who get together because they want to watch a sports game and they're really into their team.
Absolutely.
Or any other kind of like passion. And to me, that's beautiful. In the weirdest, which is, I say weird as a good term, in the weirdest fucking way possible. It's beautiful.
I want to jump in on that, actually, because that's a good point. I remember, again, like as a kid, you did not find other horror fans. So I was alone on my thing. I would show friends these movies, and like, they didn't care. Or they like, I saw one of the Elm Street movies. And then I remember the first time in the 90s when they started doing conventions in New York, you would go to these conventions, like, it was like going to a sporting event. You're like, these are my people. Like, they all get it. I'll mention the movie Demons, and this guy's like, I love Lombardo Bava's Demons. I'm like, me too. And like, I'm having like 20-minute conversation about this movie that only I felt like I had ever seen before.
Right.
So you find your people, that's your audience. It feels like going to like a sporting event, and you're like, I'm finally with everyone that's rooting for the same team.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Which is interesting, and just shift course just slightly here, but curious to know, Nick, how you feel about now we're at a point where everything is available. You go on Tubi or whatever, and you see Hell of the Living Dead available to anyone who stumbles upon it.
There is no film that exists unless it's completely out of print altogether that you cannot find within 30 seconds.
Right. And then there's like, there's like the snob in me where I'm like, that belongs to me and my friends.
It belongs in the museum.
It belongs in
There is like a sense of ownership, like to the genre, and not in a negative way, but it's like you kind of like, I love this thing for so long, and no one can give a crap about it, and now all of a sudden, like, everyone's like, this is the best. I'm like, I knew it was the best in '89, like, you know, but not in a snob way, just in a like.
You don't want to be a snob. You want to be condescending.
No, you don't want the thing that you love watered down.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because there is this bandwagon appeal to anything that was niche that is now mainstream.
Yeah.
I grew up reading comic books, so when they started making superhero movies and stuff, like, I was really into it. I'm like, do I really care that much? No, but like the 14-year-old in me like appreciates this shit, and I love to nerd out about it. But now everyone's like, oh yeah, I like Batman, and you're like, ugh. Like, it's deflating because it's like, oh, don't even pretend that you can have this conversation with me.
You felt like you worked for it back then, if that makes sense. Like, I remember, because now, again, like you said, with Tubi, with the internet, with all that, like, as a kid, it's like you had to like find old horror magazines and read articles about these directors. You really had to do your homework.
Mail away for a movie.
Mail away for like, these bootleg tapes from like, like Miami or whatever. And you were like, oh, here's a copy of a Japanese Laserdisc of an Italian horror film that I'd never would be able to see otherwise, and there's some guy in his basement making copies, and you order it. And it's like, now you just go on TV and find it. So it kind of felt like...
Now we drop $46 for a 4-disc.
Now we're on like a 4K 5-disc special edition Blu-ray of an Italian horror film that like everyone can buy on Black Friday. And everyone does buy on Black Friday. So it just kind of felt like you really worked for it back then, and it was kind of yours. And so I think that's why people get that way. Like you're saying with the comic book thing. It's like, you read all those Batman comic books when you were a kid, and you knew like, all these characters, and then...
It's like, maybe it's a tiny bit petty, but it's more like the depth of my understanding and connection and passion is a part of who I am. And to you, it's like a one-off. Yeah, I like that too.
Yeah.
And so it feels petty, and you're like, I earned it and they didn't earn it. And it really has nothing to do with them. It's just, you are taking something that is so true and close to my heart, and you're saying like, oh yeah, that's cool with me too, and there's no like connection there, and it just, I think what it is, it feels empty, and something that you want to connect with people on, they're not actually connecting.
That's a good point. Yeah.
I would say that's how I would reframe. And I felt the same about other things in life. And it's like,
yeah, we all have other things that
it knocks the wind out of you. Yeah. You're like, I want to connect with you on this, and you actually haven't done your homework.
Well, I was just going to say that. It's like nowadays where everything is so readily available, I meet someone who's like a decade younger than us, and they say, oh, you like horror movies? I like horror movies.
Have you ever seen Friday the 13th?
That's the thing. Usually you'll start talking about Chucky movies or something like that. One, yeah. Chucky, yeah, like, and...
Did you see Jason in Space?
Actually, I've never seen Jason in Space.
I can't... Okay, let's just go back.
I stopped after 8.
You should.
My sniff test for that is, do I see you being curious about other things? And if I don't see you being curious, because that's what happened to me, is I grew up a horror fan, going to video stores, doing all the stuff, but not. It wasn't an obsession in my mind where I was being a completist or I was fascinated about what that director was doing elsewhere or anything like that. Right. But then I hit a point in my life where all of a sudden I was connecting all the dots, and I'm doing the research, and then IMDb comes along, and I'm like digging deep on IMDb.
IMDb is one of my fastest go-to apps on my phone,
and it's been around forever now. And it's like, and even like I've spent significant time like just trying to find like movies I saw as a kid.
Mm-hmm. And you can remember one scene?
HBO Kid. I've never seen, and oh gosh, I'm sorry, I'm going off on tangents, but like.
The fact that we haven't had any tangents yet this far into the episode is incredible.
Here's a tangent, because hopefully you relate to this, but like, I remember being as a kid watching Your Hunter from the Future, Super Fuzz,
I love Super Fuzz,
Treasure of the Four Crowns, and being like, I love this garbage, but it seems a little off to me. And then you get older and you realize that's because these are Italian productions.
Yeah.
And they're just bonkers.
Yeah.
But I spent like I discovered like Raiders of Atlantis because I was trying to find Treasure of the Four Crowns.
Okay.
Like I just never seen that on HBO and thinking how bonkers that finale was. And then just obsessively digging until I could find it. And it's Treasure of the Four Crowns, but I discovered like 8 other movies in the process.
Yeah.
And if I see that in someone else who maybe doesn't know as much as me, then I'm impressed.
Where they meet you, regardless of how far in they are, is the curiosity.
And a quick anecdote about that is like, so we go to these 24-hour horror-thons once a year, and it is 24 hours, 14 to 15 movies straight. They don't tell you what they are.
Are they films that have been out for a long time?
Yeah, they're usually...
Like, they're not brand new films.
They're 70s, 80s, maybe.
They're starting to creep into the 90s now, but like, yeah, it's usually like stuff from the 60s.
Give me some titles.
Oh.
Phantasm, Boarding House, Deadly Spawn.
Wicked. Raw Force.
I love this because you could actually be making up words and titles right now, and I would have no fucking clue.
Well, don't do the math, but 18 years we just did.
Yeah.
And 50 movies a year.
That's 18 years just of the 24-hour. They've been doing it. I was talking to Dan, the guy who does Exhumed Films, last night, and he's like, this is our 28th year doing Exhumed Films, and I've been going since he
was the first fan.
The first show. Like, yeah, I was like, I'm going out, and I'm like, and I told Dan this was Friday night, and I'm like, you just made me feel so old, because I wasn't even 28 when I started going. So more than half my life I've been going to these screenings, and I've seen every, what I consider important horror film on the big screen on film now. And it's like, as a kid, like I would have killed for that. And like, here we are. And it's like this opportunity presented to us.
You would have killed as a kid, but like this, we get this in our adult life.
This is in our adult life.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I'm so thankful for it. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's the thing. For some people, you're talking about Vietnam. There's some guys who would like watch Nam movies, and it would give them PTSD, right? There are things that we watch as a kid, like you mentioned, scare the shit out of you and give you nightmares. I'm not going to pretend that doesn't happen. But that can happen with anything, not just horror films, right? Mm-hmm. You could be watching the most innocuous thing on television and it just triggers something.
The scariest thing I ever saw was Superman 3, that chick turned into that robot.
That got me too.
I got the trading card and I had to hide the trading card.
I remember seeing that on H2O.
Holy shit.
Yeah, Superman 3 is a scary movie for lots of reasons. One, it got made. That's the scariest fucking part.
Richard Pryor scheme.
That literally, that gave me nightmares as a kid. I remember seeing that on
H2O. That was actually, there are these things in movies where you're like, that is horror.
Yeah.
That was true. Totally. That it's called a big boss fight at the end, because the whole movie is just like, what were they thinking? I know the story behind it because I'm a Superman nerd, but like that was the movie that would never get made today, or it'd be like straight to be, I shouldn't say straight to VOD.
That'd be a red box.
Yeah.
It's funny you saying that though, because it's like he's saying, like you kind of see these movies as a kid and there'd be certain things that scared you and then you try to find out what they are. You do the research. Like I just remember this one scene.
Yeah.
And the most common thing I've noticed is that when I would finally find out what these things were, I remember scaring me as a kid, 9 times out of 10, they weren't even horror movies. They're like, oh, it was a comedy or it was a horror parody. Like, so it'd be like this slapstick thing, but just the idea of like, there was this movie called Hysteria. This guy was living in a White House and the eyebrows grew really long. And I remember like,
HBO.
Yeah, you remember, I saw it like on Prison or HBO and it was like, it scared me so much. And I'm like, it's a total like parody, but he like shaves his eyebrows off and then paints them on. He looks freaky. And all I remember was the freaky eyebrows. Or Bloodbath at the House of Death. Remember the teddy bear has the knife come out of it, pop out of the thing.
I don't know what that was.
It's like a Vincent Price like horror parody. It's a comedy movie, but as a kid, I'm like, I was just scared. I didn't know. I couldn't differentiate.
There were things that were not, like, yes, you could call the original Ghostbusters horror in some ways, but that was a comedy satire, right? As a kid, that scared the shit out of me. But I think where I can relate to you guys is it also fascinated me.
Oh, yeah.
And I got huge. I collected all the toys. I was huge into the cartoon. And it was one of those things where if I started acting up, my mom would be like, okay, you should not be watching that cartoon. It's obviously having an effect on you, which it was like, it was anything but that. So according to Carolina Dunes Behavioral Health, there are actually a lot of positive impacts that horror has on people's mental health. And of course, this is a person by person case and basis, but distraction. Your minor daily stressors, you guys have both mentioned this. It's a nice distraction. For some people, it actually is escapism. Like how superheroes are for me, where it's like, where's Superman? When you have Lex Luthor running the country and shit like this, it's like, where's our hero? Catharsis? There is a catharsis in it. And it's something that in recent films, like I mentioned, like Weapons, there was a catharsis in that entire film. And the end of it, which I won't give away because it actually is a more recent film, the kind of thing that I normally would be like, again, it was in context. It was like the guy getting the arm ripped off. It was like, fuck yeah.
It's rewarding. That end is
rewarding.
Yeah.
They say there's some like pseudo exposure therapy that happens with it. So there've been, I can't think of the name of it, but there's been horror films and other non-horror like thriller kind of films that were metaphors for their parents getting divorced and the kid going through the trauma.
Most of Wes Craven stuff is about divorce and dysfunctional families.
Yes. And I remember reading a long expose on that and you're like, holy shit, when they paint it in that framework, it's like mind-blowing. Right. And then you're like, that's kind of brilliant. And so some of the times it's the director working through shit and they do it through story. And some of the times it's like, I want to give this to the audience. And of course, there's like any other type of, let's say, adrenaline thing. There's a natural high to it. The thing a lot of us got back in the day with action movies, like Arnold Schwarzenegger blowing people away with a gun, like, it was like a stress reliever in some way. And the biggest one that we have talked a lot about is the bonding opportunities that come out of it. So again, when you actually put data to these things, you can have somebody banging the drum all day long that, well, it's going to cause this. I think there's a less of that now, but for every time we think we've turned a corner, there's always a Candace Cameron beer that will come out there and tell you otherwise. And it's like, no, man, the people who are writing this stuff about ghosts and demons and scary things are as you had mentioned, they're usually the polar opposite. They're the people who want social justice or the people who want to see the good guy win. But you can't write those two-dimensional stories where the hero shows up on the steed and he defeats the dragon and he gets the princess. That shit doesn't play out anymore. It doesn't work. And we're smart enough to know that's not how the world's built. So how do you guys think horror has changed just in the last few decades?
I think, to go back to what you were saying about like what horror means to everyone, I think like as a kid, the best way to describe it is that horror was like a roller coaster. It's like you're going to watch a horror movie, you're going to see something horrific, you're going to experience something scary, and then at the end of the day, you're going to get off the roller coaster, you're going to finish the movie, and you're going to be fine. You know you're going to be safe, So it was that adrenaline rush. I think these days, You get a lot more of the modern horror is more overtly like it does have a message in it. Like you're going to put something in there like this is a metaphor for racism or injustice, or it's not as subtle as, like I said, Wes Craven. Like you watch all those early Wes Craven movies and they're all about dysfunctional families. Like Hills Have Eyes. It's like here's a normal all-American family going out into the mountains, and here's this dysfunctional family of mutants coming to tear them apart. Like, and he came from a broken home. So it's like, I think that's what Wes Craven was working through. I think these days, now, when you make a movie, you can just be outright political in it. It doesn't have to be so buried, I think. Like, if you have a message, you can weave it more into the storyline. Mm-hmm. And I think because of that, you had tons of gore in the 70s and early 80s. And then during the Reagan years, like they really clamped down on that stuff in the MPAA. And then even by 96, when Scream came out, it's like you have a shot of someone hanging in a tree, and we have to speed up the shot of someone hanging in the tree. You can't show Drew Barrymore hanging in the tree for too long because it's too graphic. Where you flash forward 10 years from that, and you're watching Walking Dead on TV, not even in the theater, and you're seeing people getting torn apart, and soccer moms are watching it.
Yeah, and then that evolves into like Game of Thrones and some of this shit. And Spartacus, I don't know if you guys watched that. They had guys getting their genitalia cut off and like...
It's not even a horror movie, but...
And these are the things that, like, again, the soccer moms are showing up, and where people are at the water cooler, like, oh, did you see that episode last night? Remember when the guy got his head chopped off and then the guy had sex with his... and you're like, what? Mm-hmm.
So in some ways, it's like we've become more... desensitized isn't the right word.
I think as a whole we have become desensitized in the wrong ways, because with the ones that you guys are talking about, Shaun, you hit the nail on the head. There was purpose to it. There was a ratio between the story and it was purpose driven. I've always been a critic of shock for shock value. That to me, it serves no purpose. I always make the joke. I'm like, I love boobs. And if I'm watching a movie and there's just boobs for no reason, I'm like, I don't give a shit about the plot anymore. You lost me. It's like shiny object. So like shows like Game of Thrones, and I'm not knocking it for the people who loved it, but there was so much sex and I saw it was gratuitous. And I am anything but a prude when it comes to nudity. It's just the other side of my brain turns on and this one goes off. So no longer do I give a shit about story.
Well, again, to me, it's the icing on the cake metaphor.
Yes, it should be.
Keep it in proportion, keep it to what it's supposed to be.
There's also that aspect too, fun gore versus gore. It's like you watch something like Evil Dead 2, that movie is wall-to-wall blood, but it's a Three Stooges. It's Three Stooges with lots of blood. But then you watch something like Cannibal Holocaust and you're like, this is really gruesome and it's really upsetting. So I think it's also the filter you present it through. And I feel like gore now, there isn't really fun gore anymore. Like fun gore is like where like I'm watching Peter Jackson's Bad Taste. Ha ha ha. Like you shoot him 500 times with a machine gun and he shot his arm off and he's running around being goofy. Like,
oh, there's another perfect example. Sorry, this just popped in my head. Something that wasn't horror, but that traumatized the shit out of me. RoboCop.
Yes.
Do you remember when he gets killed?
He's like melting.
And these guys, they shoot in the film what must be 5,000 bullets into them. And the way they're like celebrating over it was so traumatic to me. Like I never thought it was that cool of a movie because I couldn't get past that part. That was so that was more horrific than most anything else I had ever seen.
We were talking about that before we started recording.
Oh, were you guys talking about that movie?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't even know that.
Yeah.
Subconsciously, it seeped in through the TV because Candace's camera was on the other side of it.
Well, that's even the Superman 3 thing again. It's like, that was the same thing. That was horrific to me because here's this innocent person, doesn't want this happening to them. Then making like,
and I'm just the way that was shot.
And I'm always in the head of like, how's this person that this is happening to? Like, what's happening to them?
And see, and that's the beautiful notion that completely undoes that idea that these people who watch and love this genre must also be fucked up. Because, I've known Shaun for a little bit. I just met you tonight. I can say both of you are like some of the most empathetic, caring people. So it isn't, I want to see people just get tortured and hurt. I think it's when that happens in a movie, it has to have a purpose, and it has to lead to some kind of. We're at a place right now, right, where the Lovely Bones was found.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so how far away was that?
Right down the street.
Yeah.
Literally down the street.
I watched them film it. Yeah.
Now, I know a lot of people criticize Peter Jackson for not showing the rape and murder, and he's like, what the fuck? It's a, like, what, 12-year-old girl? What was she?
Yeah.
She's like, no, I'm not going to put that in the movie. But the whole time you're like, I just hope they catch him and kill him. And that would be too easy, right? That's like, what was the point of telling this story? And instead, they tell you this deep, layered story. I didn't think it was the greatest movie. I heard people love the book way more. But then at the end, you get that catharsis that you need. And it's certainly the people who love that book and love that story. It's because they want that girl and that family to get justice, not because I think it's awesome what Stanley Tucci did.
It's the reward factor of seeing him get his comeuppance.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like you want...
Spoiler alert. I was going to see the actual events that you host at the Colonial Theater. What takes place at those?
Usually we'll track down the film. I'll go on stage. I'll give a couple facts about the movie, like when it was shot or some interesting anecdotes. Sometimes it's easy to see when a story about when I first saw the movie in the theater or whatever. We run the film. We've had guests out before, like people in the movies. Like I showed Friday the 13th 2 and had Lauren Marie Taylor out, or Maniac and had the director out. So sometimes we do something like that.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And you've been going to these?
Funny, because it's a town next to me. I don't make singular events the way I wish I could. Because
you just make excuses.
Huh? Yeah, I'm at a soccer game half the time.
Oh, yeah.
So my focus is more on getting to the big festivals. So there's a 24-hour horror festival in October. You guys put on the
Italian Splatterfest.
The Italian Splatterfest, which I do try to get to. And then in May, we have a 12-hour X-Fest, which is non-horror, but just all exploitation, excluding horror.
Like a kung fu movie, exploitation.
Kung fu, yeah.
It
could be a porn, it could be... But it's the same audience. I mean, it's the same group of guys.
They literally ran a Jaws porn parody called Gums.
That was awkward.
Dave, our technical producer, I think he's Googling it right now. So we're in a room surrounded by physical media. I for a long time was that guy, but then every time we changed to a new form of it, I finally gave up. And you guys know the history behind it and the tie to porn of all things, as you just mentioned, right?
The VHS beta and porn back.
Yeah, Blu-ray, HDD. So we've talked about it in the show, but I went to journalism school and taught media and everything. Like, porn dictates what wins out. Now we're getting out of the physical media and into the virtual media. Same thing, and internet and everything else, right? It's all driven by the porn industry. So for all those people, again, going, porn's evil, whatever your opinion is, it is so much money is involved in it that it dictates how we consume our media. The VHS tape that your kid watched Barney on was because the porn industry decided that beta was more expensive and VHS was cheaper, and they could buy little 15-minute reels to put porn on. Your kid watched Barney because of porn. That's not really true. But you guys are obsessed with physical media, obviously. And as a film buff, I understand why. It's a collector's thing, right?
It's like curating your own collection of your tastes. That's the best way to describe it.
Yes. And you guys can talk to the fact that there's been a rise in boutique physical media, and you guys are both really into this. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's this dual feeling of now it's available to anyone, but it is truly glorious time for collectors, because this is not like going to Best Buy or Walmart and picking Cloverfield off the shelf. Like, these are top shelf releases from like boutiques that really, really give a shit.
You get a movie like Hell of the Living Dead, which is like an Italian Dawn of the Dead knockoff grade Z, but you're getting the Criterion Collection treatment, where here is a 3-disc edition with the soundtrack and a 100-page book and a hard case and 4K.
Yeah.
It's like, if you love, like, we love this stuff. If you love these movies, like, here's the best way you can ever own it. Like, you know, the definitive edition. You always feel that way, and then another format comes out, and you're like, well, this is the definitive edition, but...
Actually, you know what that reminds me? You know what I have a ton of that kind of collector stuff with? Is a movie that is not only one of my favorite films, you could easily classify it as a horror film, and it is the reason that we're even sitting here today.
Superman 3. Bitch.
The return of the bitch. No, it's the reason. I always was a storyteller and playing with the camera, knew I wanted to like do film. But when I saw the film, I saw it like 5 times in theater, and then I watched the making of when it came out, and I was like, yeah, it was Jurassic Park.
Yeah.
Jurassic Park is very much a horror film in many ways. I mean, Jaws, right? You know, Spielberg knows how to do those tense things. And to me, he was at his pinnacle at that point because he knew you only show the monster for a few minutes in the movie. Mm-hmm. When you overshow the monster, like Friday the 13th, they knew how the shadow and the impending doom was way scarier than anything you saw, right? When it came to the killing. And like Spielberg was amazing with that. But I have so much cool Jurassic Park shit, and it's unique, and owning the physical media, like that's a movie I would never be okay with not owning all of that stuff with.
Yeah.
If you guys had to pick, and I know as a film guy, you can't say what's my favorite movie. If you guys, I'm going to ask each of you though, to pick one film in the genre and why you love it so much.
Wow. Well, I always say that John Carpenter's Halloween is my favorite movie of all time. But I don't want to go there. Like, I want to.
Is that too easy?
Yeah, it kind of is. Like,
so close to my pick, so you better watch what you say here, buddy.
Okay, I'll do like a hard left. Something.
Should I go?
Go first on that way.
Because it's again, it can be it can change by the day, but I will default to Black Christmas.
It's a good one.
Black Christmas.
The recent one?
No.
Okay.
1974.
Yeah.
So Bob Clark, who we mostly know here as director of Porky's
Christmas
Story.
Christmas Story, which was filmed in Cleveland, by the way, and the Christmas Story house is right down the street from.
Yeah,
it is?
Yeah, we've been there.
I thought that was Indiana.
Nope.
Indianapolis.
They may have shot some of it there.
I was there. I was just there.
They were literally a mile and a half from there. You fucked up, bro.
All right. All right. I'm going on assignment with you next week. As soon as you're back in town. Cleveland.
Done.
Fuck. So, like I'm sure everyone in this room, Christmas Story rules. But what too many people don't know is that Bob Clark directed 3 horror movies in the 70s. 2 of them are superb films. One of them is Black Christmas. And everything that rules about Christmas Story, about how the setting feels lived in, and how the characters feel relatable, and that whole movie, I mean, again, I saw it as a kid, I can't separate nostalgia from other qualities of the film sometimes. But every whoopee feeling I get from Christmas Story, I get from Black Christmas. It's set at Christmas time. It's a sorority house. The excuse for people disappearing is that these girls are leaving for holiday. And I don't want to say too much about it, except that anyone listening, go see it if you haven't seen it. But there were some phone calls in that movie that to this day, if I listen to it, I'm just getting chills now talking about it. Like the way they physically did those the phone calls, using different voices all at once, and is just chilling. And it's got John Saxon in it. It's got Margot Kidder in it.
Margot Kidder?
It's got a great cast of people.
Andrea Martin. Who's showing in the remake.
Yeah.
Yeah. She's in the 2006 remake, yeah.
Yeah, it's got a couple of Canadian actors. I forget the guy's name, but it's just a great cast. It's a great movie. It's Bob Clark, and it's scary as hell. And that movie, and it's a proto slasher.
That's the thing I always find fascinating about that movie is you watch that movie and there's so many elements of what kind of became staple slasher moments that movie did first, like the calls coming from.
Isn't that how it always is though? Yeah. Like the people who did it first, it's not that they didn't do it great. It's just like they may have done it without the marketing.
It's It's just right time, right place.
Yeah.
That's what I was.
Yeah. And then I think Halloween I'll go with Halloween because Halloween is my favorite movie of all time. That was like Nirvana, I think, in that sense that when Halloween hit, that forever changed kind of like the trajectory. I think Halloween and then Friday the 13th, 2 years later, those two movies back to back kind of like really opened up the door for the idea of like what became like the 80s American slasher movie. But whereas Halloween is kind of taking more from Psycho, where it's more suspense and shadows and what's going on, and then Friday the 13th is more kind of like the blood and gore, like who done it,
Well, again, Mario Bava. Bay of Blood.
Bay of Blood, yeah.
Watch Bay of Blood, and you watch
Mario Bava's Bay of Blood. It's a time film. There are kills in that movie that like Friday the 13th 2 did like, decades later, and you always thought, well, like, well, Friday the 13th too, that's the spear kill. And it's like, no, they did it first in Bay of Blood. So I think a lot of times you have these things that like don't get appreciated at the time. And that is the beauty. You want to jump back to something we were talking about. The beauty of this stuff being out there now and everyone having access to it is that people can finally see Bay of Blood or see Black Christmas and realize like, hey, these movies did it first. And that they aren't like Black Christmas. I remember that was so hard to find, like in the video store era. Yeah.
This season, I've been trying to ask a random question at the end of the episode that either doesn't tie into the conversation or very indirectly does. And there were so many obvious ones. And instead, I wanted to ask each of you, what is your favorite non-horror movie?
I'd probably say Dazed and Confused. Like, I'm a huge fan of like coming of age movies. I love like Richard Linklater. Yeah. I love how he just captures a moment in time. I'm a huge nostalgia person for teenage years. My YouTube channel, Ultra YouTube channel. All it is I just videotape my day-to-day life all through my teenage years in the 90s.
So awesome.
That's what Dazed and Confused is. It literally is just 24-hour window of time in these kids' life on their last day of high school. And it's instantly relatable. You didn't have to grow up in the 70s. You can watch it in any time period.
Absolutely.
And it doesn't have to be like, here's like your big arc and all that. It's like, no, let's live with these characters for a little bit. And I think it's a perfect movie.
It is a great film. And it's funny, it like the horror genre, that was a film that not a lot of people knew about.
Correct.
And now it's a mainstream, everybody knows about it. And because
Criterion really.
Criterion, and it launched Matthew McConaughey, Ben Affleck, like a lot of these guys, one of the twins,
Jeremy London,
who was also with Ben Affleck in Mallrats, right? See, I love that you guys are nerdy enough to get all those references. Yeah, that's actually a great call. And when I saw it on VHS, when I rented it from Blockbuster, immediately I fell in love and went out and bought the soundtrack. The soundtrack was so fucking good.
I remember somewhere in '94, I drove around with my friend and we would just blast that soundtrack.
They introduced me to Tuesday's Gone.
Yeah, that's that same here. That was my favorite song on the soundtrack.
Yeah,
it's so good.
That was me with Pulp Fiction.
That's your favorite non-horror film?
No. Soundtrack though. So '94.
Yeah, amazing.
Yeah.
What?
All right, so tomorrow I'm gonna wish I said something like French Connection or
Don't Be Cool.
Blue Collar.
You don't have to be cool.
Friends of Eddie Coyle. But I'm gonna say The Last Dragon. For me, The Last Dragon.
So why is that one of your favorites?
So I'm just going pure comfort food, childhood. That movie was everything to me. It's got one of the greatest villains, was Shonuff. Julius Curry III, I think that's the actor who played Shonuff. He was just such a badass, iconic villain. It's got an amazing soundtrack, Motown soundtrack, which to this day, it's like, if I'm like just trying to get over the edge of my project, I just put on the Last Dragon soundtrack. Everything about it is it's just fucking cutting into shepherd's pie, maybe.
Yeah.
It's just
we all have those films. That's awesome.
And it could easily be Big Trouble in Little China as well.
I was about to say it's very reminiscent of that.
Yeah.
What they tried to do with like The Golden Child and some of those other films.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. And just the colorful 80s and like the music and the soundtrack.
Shonuff is one of the greatest characters of all time.
It's so amazing.
And because of him alone, I think that has become more of a mainstream cult phenomenon that people actually
kiss my Converse. Bitch.
Well, guys, thank you so much for first of all, for inviting us into your home, for letting us play with your toys, for letting us nerd out. This has been awesome. I knew you guys were going to introduce me to so many things. Now I know what to go, find on IMDb and Google when I get back to the hotel. But go ahead and plug whatever links you want. Market the hell out of you.
Okay, perfect. I do a YouTube channel called 90s Grunge Dreams. And essentially what it is like I said, I've videotaped my day-to-day life, like late 80s through the 2000s. But I have a lot of footage of going and hanging out in malls that are no longer there. A lot of footage of going to see movies opening night, like Scream 2, or like a lot of horror movies in the 90s and the 2000s. Blair Witch opening night, I mean, that was a cultural phenomenon.
Yeah.
And I have like footage of going to the art house theater the night that opened. But it's really just kind of like, my idea with it is a slice of life. Like kind of like, here's what growing up in the 90s.
You sit there and rewatch it and drink a beer and cry.
A little bit. Like,
yeah, because
you get into some of that footage and you kind of like, when you interact with it, and I mean by interact with it, it's like when you're editing and all that, it's different than passively watching it because you're really kind of living that world.
Yeah.
What do I want to keep? What do I not want to keep? And it's like, you kind of like, that's what prom felt like. My prom's on there. So it's like, that's what prom felt like or whatever. So it's a lot of fun,
Where can people find your channel?
It's on YouTube. It's called 90s Grunge Dreams. Yeah, check it out.
Awesome.
We need to develop a candle that just smells like video stores.
I would buy that candle.
I think it exists. I actually think it exists.
You find that for me.
It's gonna smell
Christmas present for sure.
Yes.
It's like that carpet and plastic clamshell case smell.
Shaun, you have your own.
Yeah, I don't know what to plug. I mean, I'm a freelance. I have an LLC called Open House Studio. I'm a designer and an illustrator. So openhousestudio.com if you need any design. I don't know what to say. I feel like I'm out of context right now.
You should whore yourself. It's worth the cause.
My first Fangoria magazine. This is how we're gonna whore ourselves. Yeah, I'm all ready.
These were our first issues.
Yeah.
I bought the Chester County Book Company in 1987. Yours is 87 too, right?
Yeah, I bought this in the comic.
Show the camera right there, Shaun.
Oh shit! Hey.
In third grade, my teacher took this away and told me not to bring this garbage into class again. So.
And I bought this and took it to school the next day, and it looks like this looks the way it is because of wear and tear. But this was all like the second day I owned it. Kids saw it and they just tore it out of my bag, and they ripped it to pieces. But to this day, I have it.
Yeah, bringing a Fangoria to school in the 80s was like
bad news, man.
Candy. All the kids were like, let me see, because they wanted to see all the monster pictures and stuff like that.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys. And now all of you out there have a ton of titles to go check out. So take it from these two. I don't know anybody who knows more about the genre than them. But thank you for tuning in. Thank you for being nerds with us. And we'll see you next time.
In your nightmares.
We just went there. Now you can go to thegoingtherepodcast.com for links to all the podcast platforms, our socials, and of course, YouTube. While you're at it, give us a rating, share with a friend, and subscribe.
This podcast is brought to you in part by its host and Frame One Media, in association with Kaylee Williams, Joe Calley, and Bobby Thomas.